What would you do if you came home from surgery, barely able to stand, only to find your wife of 42 years, the love of your life, almost gone? And then, just moments later, you discover your own son, your only child, left her there to die, posting online about how he finally deserved a week without my pathetic old folks. That's my story. The key fought me. 3 days out of knee surgery, and every turn of that metal in the lock sent a jolt of pain through my leg. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare me for the chilling silence that met me inside our home. No TV, no lights, just stillness. The kind that makes your skin prickle. Helen. My voice cracked in the emptiness. Chester. Nothing. A cold dread seeped into my bones. Something was terribly wrong. I shuffled through the living room, my cane clicking against the hardwood floors I'd laid with my own hands decades ago. Every architect in me screamed at the details. Curtains drawn in the afternoon. Mail piled up, a faint, stale smell. Then I saw it. The bedroom door ajar. I pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Sickly sweet. Something human and wrong. And there she was. Helen. Our Helen. Tangled in the sheets. Her face turned away. Lips dry and cracked. The water pitcher on the nightstand was bone dry, tipped over. My heart seized. Helen. Her eyes fluttered open. Slowly, painfully. Recognition flickered. Then a raw mix of relief and profound shame. Simon, she whispered, barely a breath. You're back. I forgot my knee. I forgot everything except her. My wife. Diminished, fragile, wrong. My Helen, reduced to this. What happened? Where's Chester? 3 days, she whispered, the words barely audible. He promised he'd come back. 3 days. My son. Left her here. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I pulled a chair close, sat and took her hand. It felt like dried leaves, so frail. When did he leave, Helen? I asked, my voice a strained whisper. Tuesday. I think Tuesday. My mind, always calculating, always building, clicked into place. I had gone into surgery, Wednesday. Today was Friday. 3 days. Did he leave you water? I asked. He filled the pitcher, she rasped. I remember that. But I couldn't, the wheelchair. I couldn't reach. I looked. The wheelchair, Helen's lifeline, sat against the far wall, impossibly distant. Chester knew his mother couldn't walk unaided. He knew, and he'd put it there anyway. The calm that had held me together shattered. A cold, hard anger began to form. I'm calling for help, I said, pulling out my phone. Helen, ever the mother, pleaded. Don't be angry with the boy. I didn't answer. There was no answer. The dispatcher was on the line quickly. My voice, perfected over decades of dealing with tough contractors, was steady, almost unnervingly so. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. 14 minutes later, paramedics were here. 2 women, efficient and serious. Questions came in a torrent. How long without fluids? Any medical conditions? Where was her caregiver? My son, I heard myself say, watching them work over Helen. He was supposed to be here. They exchanged a look I'd seen 1,000 times in different contexts. A look that spoke volumes. She could have. The younger one started, then stopped. They didn't need to finish the sentence. I knew. We need to transport her, they said. I'll follow. As they wheeled her out, I stood in that empty bedroom, the silence a heavy blanket. The evidence screamed. Medication bottles unopened, just out of reach. That water glass. The wheelchair, positioned with cruel precision. Next, Chester's room. Clothes strewn everywhere. Drawers yanked open. Hangers empty. His passport, usually tucked in his desk, was gone. I knew because I'd used his printer just last week. As I came back down the hall, the front door opened. It was Mrs. Patterson, our neighbor, holding a casserole. Simon, you're back. How's the knee? Have you seen Chester? Her smile faltered at something in my expression. Tuesday morning, early, she said. He had big suitcases. Said he was finally getting a break. Looked happy. Tuesday. My chest tightened. Everything's fine, I managed, taking the casserole and closing the door with a control I didn't feel. In the kitchen, I found takeout containers in the trash. Chinese. 1 meal's worth. Chester had fed himself, packed his bags, and walked out while his mother slept. My phone felt like a brick in my pocket. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling slightly as I navigated to Chester's social media. For a split second, I wished it wouldn't load. But it did. Bright sun, turquoise water, a sweating cocktail glass, and Chester's face, wide and carefree. Sunglasses pushed up on his head. Location, Barcelona. Post 2 hours old. I scrolled to the caption. There they were, the words that would haunt me. Finally, a week without the pathetic old folks. Pathetic old folks. My son, my only child, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, put through college, the one who moved back in after his tech startup failed, the one who promised he'd help care for his mother while I recovered. Pathetic, old folks. Instinctively, I took a screenshot. Years of architectural plans and client agreements had taught me to document everything. Evidence. Then, with a precision born of not trusting what my hands might do, I placed the phone face down on the kitchen table. The house was quiet now, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Somewhere in Spain, Chester was laughing, drinking expensive cocktails, celebrating his freedom. Here, his mother was in an ambulance, fighting for her life from dehydration. She could have died. I said it aloud, the words echoing in the empty space. She could have died. The architect in me understood structural integrity, load-bearing walls, a single point of failure. I designed buildings to keep people safe. Chester had wanted a break. Freedom from obligation, from the burden of his elderly parents, from the weight of responsibility. My hands, surprisingly, were steady now. The tremor was gone, replaced by something cold, and very, very clear. That hospital coffee was awful. I'd bought 2 cups, one for Helen, one for me, but she was still sleeping when I arrived. So I sat in the corridor, the morning light cold through the windows, and drank both. They went from lukewarm to cold, bitter, just like the clarity that was settling over me. I spent the night in a chair beside her bed, listening to the quiet beeps of machines, watching fluids drip into her arm. The doctors said she'd be fine, dehydrated, exhausted, some early bed sores, but fine. But I knew, one more day, and it might have been so different. Around 8 a.m., Helen's eyes opened. She looked at me, and I saw understanding bloom in her gaze. She knew that I knew. The unspoken truth hung heavy between us. "You saw his post," she whispered. There was nothing to say. "He didn't mean it," she tried, her voice weak. "He's young, frustrated." I poured fresh water, held the cup to her lips. She sipped. "We're difficult," she added. "You almost died, Helen." But I didn't, and he's still our son. Promise me you won't. "Please just rest," I interrupted, squeezing her hand. She searched my face, then closed her eyes. I stayed another hour, then drove home. My knee ached, but the pain felt distant. Everything felt manageable now. The chaos had given way to an icy calm. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed Chester's car still in the garage. Of course, an Uber to the airport. Efficient, the kind of planning that goes into a successful escape. Inside, the house felt different in the daylight. Yesterday, all I could focus on was Helen. But now the smaller details screamed at me. A coffee mug in the sink, his laptop charger still plugged in, his favorite hoodie slung over a chair. Then I heard the refrigerator close. I turned. A woman stood in my kitchen, eating yogurt with one of Helen's good silver spoons. Mid-30s, dark hair, wearing one of Chester's old college sweatshirts. "Oh," she said, completely unfazed. "You're back. Helen." It took me a moment. Stephanie, Chester's girlfriend. Fiancée, I remembered. He'd mentioned her a few times, usually when he needed money for a date. "Why are you in my house?" I asked, my voice flat. She raised an eyebrow, spooning yogurt. "Chester's house. Technically. Eventually." She laughed, a short, humorless sound. "I'm staying in the guest room. He said it was fine. He doesn't own this house. Yet." She set the yogurt down, leaning against my counter like she belonged there. "But we both know he will. Old people don't live forever." Her words hung in the air, a cruel, cold confirmation of everything I had just discovered. For 40 years, I'd navigated tough negotiations, difficult clients. My training kicked in. My voice, when I spoke, was calm even. "Get out. Make me." Her smile wasn't pleasant. "Oh, wait. You can't. Chester lives here. I'm his guest. This is my house. I built it. I designed every corner. And Chester's your only child. Heir. Sole beneficiary. He told me all about the will." She casually examined her nails. "It's sweet, really. Leaving everything to family." "Things change," I said, moving carefully towards my study. Every step deliberate. Not wills. Not at your age. Too complicated. Too expensive. Besides, Chester said you're old school. You'd never cut off your own son. "You'd be surprised what I can do," I muttered. "Where are you going?" she called. "My study. Feel free to let yourself out." Behind me, I heard her laugh again. Heard the refrigerator open. Heard her moving through my house like she owned it. Like it was already hers. In my study, I closed the door, taking a moment to steady my breath. Behind the bookshelf, hidden in a cavity I designed myself, was the safe. Only Helen and I knew about it. The combination? Our wedding date. A date Chester never bothered to remember. It clicked open. Inside, among other documents, was the will. I'd drawn it up 15 years ago, when Chester graduated college, when we still believed he'd make something of himself. Everything split between Helen and Chester, with the house going to him when we were both gone. Sole beneficiary. I laid it on my desk under the green shaded lamp. It looked so official, so permanent. All those legal words, arranging our lives into neat categories. I left it there and pulled out my phone. Angela Ray, my attorney for 20 years, was in my contacts under legal. She answered on the third ring. Simon? Is everything all right? It's late. It was 7:30. Not late, but later than I usually called. Angela, I said, my voice rock solid. I need to change my will. Completely. Remove my son. Silence. The kind of silence that means someone is recalculating everything. That's significant, she said carefully. Can this wait until normal business hours? No, I said. Tomorrow morning. First appointment. This is urgent. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted to her serious legal register. Understood. 9 a.m. My office. Bring current documents and identification. Then, with a hint of concern, Simon, these kinds of changes, are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness. Though still on the desk, Stephanie's movements audible somewhere in my house. This document represented 40 years of building, a family, protection, continuity. Chester had been the foundation of that belief. But foundations could be rebuilt. I'd done it before with buildings. You expose the damage, cut away what's rotten, pour new concrete. By this time tomorrow, that piece of paper would mean nothing. And Chester? He'd finally get his break. A permanent one. Angela Ray's waiting room smelled exactly as you'd expect. Leather and old money. I sat in one of those expensive chairs, feeling the dull throb in my knee, a distant echo of surgery. It felt like months ago, not days. The manila envelope on my lap felt heavy. Screenshots. Helen's discharge summary. The old will. Evidence. She's ready for you, Mr. Watkins, the receptionist smiled. Angela's office was professional, efficient, the kind of place where serious things got done. She greeted me, gestured to the chair opposite her imposing mahogany desk. Simon, please sit. Tell me exactly what happened. Start from when you got home. I laid out the documents, chronologically, the architect in me still organizing even as my stomach churned. Timeline first. Medical records. Social media evidence last. I found my wife dying, I began. My son was in Barcelona posting vacation photos. Angela picked up the printed screenshots. Her expression remained neutral, the lawyer's mask. These are remarkably callous. That's my son, or who he's become. I tapped Helen's summary. She was alone for 3 days. No water, no medication. Could have died. No thanks to Chester. Angela set the papers down, folding her hands. You want him removed from your will. I can do that. But first, let me show you something better. For the next hour, she explained Florida law. Simple changes, she said, could be contested for years by disgruntled heirs. But a trust? Immediate. Irrevocable in effect. You transfer assets now, she explained, sketching a diagram. You control them while you're alive. Designate beneficiaries who receive everything automatically upon death. No probate, no contest period. He can't fight what's already done. I took notes. This was a new kind of construction project. Load-bearing decisions. Structural integrity. Long-term stability. Your total estate, she consulted my documents, approximately 1.2 million. You're transferring everything to the MS Foundation. Everything. The house I designed, every dollar I saved. Chester gets nothing. Angela leaned back, and for a fleeting moment, her professional mask cracked. Simon, I have to ask, is there any chance you'll reconcile? This is permanent. He left his mother to die alone, I said, looking her straight in the eye. That's permanent, too. She nodded slowly. Understood. Let's proceed. The document preparation took until late afternoon. Each clause customized. Asset descriptions. Trust designations. Beneficiary details. I read every paragraph. Initialing with the same architectural drafting pen I'd used to sign the final plans for my house 40 years ago. How long does this take? I asked. We can have documents ready today, notarized tomorrow. Effective immediately. Do it. The next morning, I drove to Milton Willis's notary office. Milton, a retired real estate lawyer I'd known for decades, shook my hand. Simon? Heard about Helen. How's she doing? Better now she's home. Good, good. He gestured to Angela's documents. Let's make this official. The notarization was methodical. Signatures, witness statements, official stamps making everything undeniably real. By late afternoon, I was back in Angela's office. The documents sat on her desk, complete, binding. These documents are active now, she said. Then she pulled up her email. Do you want Chester informed, or should we wait? Inform him immediately. He's still in Spain. This will end his vacation rather abruptly. Good, I added, the coldness in my voice surprising even myself. He ended Helen's life abruptly. Fair's fair. Angela typed, attaching the trust documents, asset lists, legal language explaining his removal. This isn't a threat, Simon. It's done. She reviewed the email, then looked at me. Last chance to change your mind. Send it. Her finger hovered, then clicked. The screen showed the sending animation, that little progress bar, simultaneously too fast and too slow. Done. I sat there, watching the afternoon light. Not peace, not yet, but a profound certainty had settled inside me. This wasn't a game I'd chosen to play, but I would finish it. On my terms. Thank you, Angela. Just doing my job, she said, walking me to the door. Simon, Chester's going to react badly. Be prepared. I know. What I didn't say was, I'm counting on it. An hour later, back in my study, the phone started ringing. Chester. His name lit up the screen. I watched it. Didn't answer. Voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. And again. I counted every single one. 27 calls. The voicemails told the story. The first, confused. Dad, I got this weird email from your attorney. Call me back. By message 10, anger boiled over. What is this? You can't just give everything away. I'm your son. Message 15, desperation. You're making a huge mistake. Stephanie's talking to lawyers. You can't just steal my inheritance. I listened to every single one as the sun set. Each message, another piece of evidence. Another glimpse into who Chester truly was when he didn't get what he wanted. Then came the texts. Stephanie joined in, her messages shorter, angrier. You're a cruel old man. That house belongs to Chester. We'll fight this. I set the phone face down and went to make dinner. Helen came home the next morning. I'd hired Maria, a professional caregiver with 12 years of experience with MS patients. Maria arrived with a medical bag and an air of calm competence that instantly changed the house's atmosphere. Maria, this is Helen, my wife. I gave her the rundown. Medication times, charts on the nightstand. I've worked with MS patients for 12 years, Mr. Watkins, she said. She's in good hands. Helen, still weak, but clear, looked up. Is Chester coming by today? The question hit my chest like a weight. He's been traveling. He'll visit when he can. Maria, sensing the tension in my non-answer, gave Helen a gentle smile. Let's get you comfortable, Helen. Can you tell me about your medication schedule? I left them to it, returning to my study. The waiting was the hardest part. I knew Chester would come. An emergency flight from Barcelona to Tampa, then the drive to Sarasota. Expensive. Probably wiped out whatever money he had left. The thought brought me no joy, no sadness. Just a cold calculation. He arrived on the 6th evening, just after 7. I heard the car door slam, then his key in the lock. He still had access, but no ownership. The irony was sharp. Where are you? His voice, strained and angry, echoed through the house. Dad. I stood in the living room, strategically. My back to the hall, not the wall. Physical space matters in confrontation. Back early? Barcelona didn't agree with you. He appeared in the doorway. 10 hours on a plane showed on his face. Bloodshot eyes, wrinkled clothes, unwashed hair pulled into a sloppy ponytail. Stephanie, for the first time, looked uncertain, trailing behind him. Don't. Chester's voice shook. Don't you dare joke. What did you do? The trust, the foundation, everything to charity. I made arrangements for my estate. Adults do that. My estate, that's my inheritance. You can't give it all away. Actually, I said, keeping my voice level, almost conversational. I can. I did. My calm seemed to infuriate him more than any shouting could. This is because of Mom. She's fine. She's home now, right? No thanks to you. You left her to die. I didn't. It was just a few days. I needed a break. A break. The word landed like ice in my chest. You needed a break? She needed water, food, her medication. Which mattered more? Chester lunged forward, hands gesturing wildly. Dad, I'm sorry. I'll do better. Just change it back. Please, we can fix this. You lost the right to call me Dad, I said, the words cutting sharp and clean, when you posted that picture. Pathetic old folks. Remember? Stephanie stepped forward. He didn't mean it like that. I looked at her directly. You told me this house would be yours soon. Did you mean that? She went quiet. Chester's desperation hardened into fury. I'll sue. I'll contest it. You're old. You were on pain medication after surgery. The trust was created 4 days after my surgery. I responded, unflappable. I was fully lucid. 2 attorneys and a notary will testify to that. Undue influence. Coercion? Try it. I sat down in my armchair, making him stand while I sat. Another power play. Another message. Spend what little money you have left on lawyers. The law is clear. The property is mine to dispose of as I choose. I'm your son. The words came out almost as a wail. No, you're someone who shares my DNA. A son would have checked on his mother. He lunged, finger jabbing at my chest. I didn't move, didn't flinch. From Helen's room, I heard Maria's concerned voice. Mr. Watkins, is everything all right? Everything's fine, Maria, I called back. Then, quieter, just for Chester, you should leave now. Before you do something you'll regret even more than Barcelona. I woke early the next morning to a silence broken only by Maria's soft movements. The confrontation felt like it happened in another lifetime. But Chester and Stephanie were still here, still asleep in the guest room. They hadn't left. This was going to be a siege. The next 2 weeks unfolded in a toxic choreography. We avoided each other, sharing space but never speaking. Chester's frustrated calls from the guest room echoed through the thin walls. Undue influence, diminished capacity, has to be something. One afternoon, I heard a phone hit the wall. Stephanie played loud music, left dirty dishes. It was passive-aggressive warfare. My focus was Helen. I spent hours in her room, reading from old architectural journals she used to tease me about. Still boring after all these years, she'd say. Now, she just lay there, eyes closed, breath shallow. Maria pulled me aside one morning in mid-February. Her vitals are stable, but she's fading. Not dramatic, just gradual. I knew. I'd known for days. The way she squeezed my hand had changed. Less strength, more desperation. Simon, her voice, barely a whisper one evening. I'm here, I said, leaning close. Right here. Chester, don't be too hard. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Rest now. Everything's handled. Her fingers tightened weakly. Love you always. Always, I said. Sleep now. And she did. For the next 2 weeks, she slept more than she woke. Ate less. Spoke not at all. Helen was leaving one breath at a time. March 2nd, early evening. Maria appeared in my study doorway. Simon. I followed her to Helen's room. The change in breathing. Shallow. Irregular. Like her body had forgotten the rhythm. I sat beside her, took her hand, talked quietly about her life. The house I designed for her. The way she always knew when I needed coffee. 42 years of small moments. Building something larger than either of us alone. She didn't respond. Didn't open her eyes. But her hand stayed in mine. Then, without drama, without a gasp, the breathing stopped. Just a gradual stillness. Then silence. Maria checked her pulse, looked at me, and gently shook her head. I sat there for an hour, still holding Helen's hand. Then I called the funeral home. Chester and Stephanie were somewhere in the house. I'd heard the television earlier. I didn't tell them. Not yet. Not until I'd made the arrangements. Chosen the casket. Handled the details with the calm precision Helen would have expected. The funeral was 4 days later. A small service, just 10 people. Elderly neighbors, a few of Helen's former coworkers, Maria. I gave a brief eulogy, talking about Helen's strength, her grace. I kept it together. Falling apart wouldn't honor her. Chester arrived late, stumbling through the door. Stephanie trying to prop him up. The smell hit me before I saw him, cologne failing to mask alcohol. He pushed past me, grabbed the podium for balance, knocking over a flower arrangement. She was my mother. His voice broke. My best woman. I loved her. I approached quietly, putting a hand on his elbow. Chester, this isn't the time. Please go. He jerked away. You don't tell me. She's my mother. And you left her to die. Everyone here knows it. Leave with some dignity. You turned her against me. You poisoned. I'm asking once more. Leave now. Mr. Patterson and another neighbor were already moving forward. Come on, son. Let's get you some air. Chester let them lead him out, still protesting. Stephanie followed, not looking at anyone. The service continued. We buried Helen under the oak trees she'd loved. I placed a single rose on her casket. The week after felt longer than the entire 2 weeks before. Chester and Stephanie avoided me more, if that was even possible. I processed my grief, privately, sitting in Helen's empty room, going through old photos, young versions of us, full of hope, a naive certainty that life would just work out. I put the photos in a box, closed it, filed it away. Then I went to my desk, pulled out Angela Ray's card and called. Simon, she answered. I'm so sorry about Helen. I saw the obituary. Thank you, I said. I appreciate that. I paused, glancing at the guest room, door down the hall. I need your help with something else now. Chester and Stephanie are still living in my house. They won't leave. How long has it been? She asked, the sound of papers rustling on her end. 3 weeks since the confrontation. A week since Helen's funeral. Okay, Florida law is clear. We need to serve them formal notice. 15 days to vacate. If they refuse, we file eviction proceedings. How long until they're physically out? Realistically, 6 weeks total from today. 6 more weeks. 6 more weeks of footsteps overhead. Hostile silences. Stephanie's music. Chester's late-night drinking. Then we do it right. Start the paperwork. The notice went out March 11th via certified mail. Milton Willis handled the sending. Everything documented. Trackable. Official. Chester signed for it on the 12th. I tracked it online. Delivered. Signature required. Received. I heard him crumple the notice. Throw it across the kitchen. Evict me? Your own flesh and blood. I didn't look up from my newspaper. My flesh and blood left his mother to die. The courts don't care about DNA. Where am I supposed to go? We have no money. You had money for Barcelona. Figured out. Stephanie, for the first time since Helen's death, tried diplomacy. Simon, please. We can pay rent. We'll contribute. No, this isn't negotiable. You have until the 26th. I marked the calendar in my study. Each day, a small X. March 14th, 15th, 16th. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. They didn't leave. March 26th came and went. From my study window, I took photos. Chester's car in the driveway, lights on in the guest room. Documentation. Mrs. Patterson, next door, signed a statement confirming their continued presence. I called Angela the next morning. They're still here. You want to proceed with the lawsuit immediately. I've documented everything. Okay, I'll file tomorrow morning. You'll need to be present for the hearing. I wouldn't miss it. The lawsuit was filed March 27th. The hearing? April 15th, 19 days away. The legal machinery had started grinding, slow but unstoppable. On April 1st, a process server appeared at my door. Clipboard in hand, she asked, "Is Chester Watkins present?" "Guest room, down the hall." She knocked. Chester, shirtless and disoriented, opened the door. She handed him the papers. "You've been served. Have a nice day." He stood there, reading, his face cycling through disbelief. "You're actually suing me? Your own son?" "You made your choice in Barcelona. I'm making mine now." "Mom would be ashamed of you." I finally looked up from the newspaper I'd been pretending to read. "Your mother asked me not to be too hard on you. She also asked you not to leave her alone. We both broke promises." He retreated. I heard raised voices, Stephanie's frustrated tone, Chester's defensive replies. April 5th, Angela called. "You got countersued. Chester's claiming you were mentally incompetent when you created the trust." I expected it. Desperation makes people predictable. I was 4 days post-surgery. Knee replacement. Local anesthetic. Mild pain medication. "Were you impaired during our meeting?" she asked, her voice firm. "You were there, was I?" "Simon, you were sharper than most clients. We have witnesses. Me, Milton, my paralegal. Plus, video timestamps from my office security show you lucid and deliberate. So he can't win. He can try, but this is desperation, not a legitimate legal strategy. It'll fail. Question is, do you want to countersue for frivolous litigation?" I considered it. More legal fees for Chester. More pressure. Let's see how the eviction hearing goes first. Fair enough. Start gathering every piece of documentation you have. Medical records, pharmacy receipts. Anything proving you were clear-headed after surgery. "Already done," I said. Boxes organized by date in my study. Every prescription. Every follow-up. Every lucid conversation documented in Maria's notes. Angela actually laughed. "Of course you do. Simon, we're going to bury this claim, and then we're going to bury him in that eviction hearing." I smiled for the first time in weeks. That's the plan. The week before the hearing, I stood in my closet, selecting a suit. Navy blue. Conservative. Respectful. Not for Chester, for the judge. On my desk sat 3 binders. Witness statements, medical records, timeline documents. Angela called my preparation overkill. I called it architecture. Every detail mattered when building a case. April 15th arrived, bright with Florida sunshine and a sharp clarity. The Sarasota County Courthouse smelled of floor polish and anxiety. Angela and I were there 30 minutes early. Chester and Stephanie showed up 12 minutes late, trailing a young attorney who looked like he'd just graduated law school. Judge Martinez, middle-aged and efficient, read through the filings quickly. "Mr. Watkins, you're evicting your son from your home. Can you explain why?" My voice was level. "Your Honor, Chester Watkins abandoned his bedridden mother for vacation overseas. She nearly died from neglect. He's not my son in any meaningful sense anymore." Chester's attorney jumped up. "Objection. Irrelevant to the eviction proceeding." "Overruled," Judge Martinez said, not looking up. "It establishes why there's no informal family arrangement. Mr. Watkins has legal right to his property." Angela presented our case, building it brick by brick. Certified mail receipts, timeline documentation, no lease agreement, no rent payment history. Chester's attorney tried the hardship angle. Nowhere to go. Family dispute. Not a legal matter. It fell flat against the evidence. The ruling took less than 20 minutes. Chester Watkins must vacate the property by May 15th, 30 days from today. Chester shot to his feet. "This is my home." Judge Martinez's eyes went cold. "Sir, one more outburst, and I'll hold you in contempt. This is my courtroom." He sat down. I remained silent, letting the law speak for itself. The competency hearing came a week later, April 22nd. Same courthouse, different room, bigger, more formal, higher stakes. Chester's attorney presented their case first. My age, 68, the surgery timing, for days post-op, pain medication records. Then Angela began dismantling it. My medical records. Only mild, over-the-counter pain relievers. The surgeon's affidavit. Minor procedure, local anesthetic, no cognitive impairment. Security footage from Angela's office. Timestamp February 12th, showing me articulate, purposeful, asking detailed questions. Milton Willis took the stand next. Mr. Willis, in your professional opinion, was Simon Watkins competent when signing the trust documents? Absolutely. Milton's voice carried decades of authority. I've notarized thousands of documents. Mr. Watkins understood every clause, asked specific questions, made deliberate choices. Textbook competency. Angela testified last, walking the judge through every interaction we'd had. Judge Thompson, older than Martinez, more formal, reviewed everything. Then he delivered his ruling. This court finds no credible evidence of diminished capacity. The medical testimony is clear. Minor procedure, minimal medication, no cognitive impact. The video evidence shows Mr. Watkins, articulate and purposeful. Claim dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Chester Watkins is barred from refiling this claim. Chester dropped his head into his hands. I heard a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. Stephanie put her hand on his shoulder. I stood, collected my binder, and walked out without looking back. Early, May brought their final desperate move. I'd installed security cameras after Chester moved back in basic doorbell models, but they covered the driveway and mailbox. On May 1st, I went grocery shopping. When I returned, Mrs. Patterson flagged me down. Simon, I saw Stephanie at your mailbox earlier. Looked like she was going through your mail. I thanked her, went inside, and pulled up the footage. There it was. Stephanie, watching my car leave, walking to the mailbox, sorting through envelopes, repeatedly glancing over her shoulder. May 3rd, I called the non-emergency police line. 2 officers arrived. I showed them the footage, explained everything. They interviewed Stephanie while Chester was out, supposedly at a job interview. Ma'am, why were you going through this mailbox? Stephanie's voice wavered. I was checking if my mail had arrived. I'm staying here, temporarily. Do you have legal residence here? Chester lives here. I'm with Chester. Mr. Watkins says Chester is being evicted. You're not supposed to touch his mail. Clear. Yes, clear. They wrote up a report. Federal mail interference. Not enough for criminal charges, but enough for an official record. They warned Stephanie not to touch the mailbox again. I filed that report in my binder. The days crawled towards May 15th. The house atmosphere shifted from toxic to something like defeated acceptance. Chester stayed mostly in the guest room, barely speaking. Stephanie packed systematically. Reality was finally settling in. On May 10th, a small moving truck appeared. I watched from my study window as they loaded boxes. Chester's furniture. Whatever he'd bought over the years. They were careful not to touch anything that had been Helen's. The day after Chester moved out, I sat in my study with a private investigator's report. I'd commissioned it in April. $800 well spent for information Chester never knew I was gathering. The report was thorough. Chester and Stephanie's new address. A 1-bedroom apartment in Northport, 30 miles south. Cheap area, $1,100 a month. Stephanie's new job, retail, $13 an hour. Chester's employment status. Unemployed, job hunting. But there was more. The house I'd given Chester 5 years ago. The one he'd lost to a property owner named Herman Olson in a poker game. The PI tracked it down. Herman Olson. 53. Professional gambler. Owned 6 rental properties. Lived at 847 Palm Avenue. I'd spent the week planning. On May 20th, I drove north to Bradenton. Herman's house was impressive. 2-story Mediterranean, immaculate yard, expensive cars. He answered the door himself. Big man. Solid. A handshake that meant business. Mr. Olson, I'm Simon Watkins. I believe. You won a house for my son in a poker game. He studied me, then nodded. Come in. His living room was comfortable, professional. I noticed a poker table through an archway. Green felt, good lighting. This was where Chester had bet everything on nothing. Your son's a terrible poker player, Herman said, pouring me coffee I hadn't asked for. Worst I've seen. He's terrible at a lot of things. Poker's just one of them. Herman smiled faintly. I'm guessing you're not here for sympathy. I'm here to buy the house back. It's not for sale. Good property, decent rental income. I pulled the deed from my briefcase. When I gave that house to Chester 5 years ago, there was a deed restriction. No transfers for 10 years without my consent. Herman's expression shifted. I didn't see any restriction. My attorney checked. Check again. Section 4, Clause B. It's recorded with Manatee County Public Records since 2020. He took the document, reading carefully. His jaw tightened. You're saying the transfer isn't valid. I'm saying you're holding property you don't legally own, which makes this conversation very important for you. The silence stretched. I watched him calculate, the way good poker players do. If what you're saying is true, why offer to buy it? Just take it back through court. I could, but litigation takes time, costs money. I'm offering you a clean exit. $320,000. You walk away whole. I paid more than that. Chester's debt was $360,000. Chester's debt isn't my problem. Current market value is $340,000. I'm offering $320,000. That's $20,000 under value. Take it or risk losing everything in court. He leaned back, studying me with new respect. You've got steel, old man. He finally agreed. All right, $320,000. 2-week closing. I'll have my attorney draw up the papers. We shook hands again. This time it felt different. Two men who understood the game, even if we'd been on opposite sides. He said this house was his future, Herman remarked as he walked me to the door. Bet it all on a pair of eights. Sounds like Chester, betting everything on nothing. You're cleaning up his mess. That's rough. I'm done cleaning up after him. This is the last one. I drove back to Sarasota with the windows down, the warm May air bomb. Herman's attorney would contact Angela by week's end. 2 weeks after that, I'd own both houses, the one I'd built and the one I'd foolishly given away. Chester was in Northport, working retail, if he'd found anything at all, living in a one-bedroom with a girlfriend already looking for the exit. The PI report had included a detail I hadn't expected. Stephanie on her phone outside their apartment, voice raised saying, I can't do this forever. Chester had no idea what I'd just done. No idea I'd recovered what he'd lost. And he wouldn't know until I decided to tell him. If I decided to tell him at all. That uncertainty, that was its own kind of justice. The closing attorney's office in Bradenton had that polished, professional air where serious transactions happened. May 31st, Herman Olson sat across from me, both of us flanked by our attorneys. Documents slid across the mahogany table. Deed transfer, wire confirmation, a small set of keys. $320,000 changed hands electronically. Numbers on a screen. Wealth. Redistributed with keystrokes. Herman signed the final page, pushed it toward the notary, then looked at me. Something like respect was in his eyes. You know, I actually feel bad for your son losing this place the way he did. Don't, I said, my voice firm. He didn't lose it. He threw it away. There's a difference. Fair enough. Herman stood, offered his hand. You play this smart. Clean. Wish more people handled things like this. I shook his hand firmly. I'm not handling things. I'm correcting mistakes. His and mine. The mistake of giving him too much. The mistake of thinking he'd earned it. I drove back to Sarasota with 2 sets of keys, 2 property deeds. At home, I placed both deeds in my safe. Side by side. One house I'd built with my own hands. One I'd foolishly given away, now recovered. Combined value, over $1 million. Chester had no idea. And that ignorance was about to become very useful. June 5th. One more legal action. One final psychological strike. I met with Angela in her office. Tell me what you're thinking. Filial responsibility, I said. She pulled up the Florida statute on her computer. Adult children financially responsible for parents' medical care under certain circumstances. Angela leaned back, studying me. Simon, this claim is weak. It's rarely enforced in Florida. You paid for Helen's care, voluntarily. Hard to prove necessity. You likely can't win this. I don't need to win, I told her. I need him to think he could lose. Understanding dawned on her face. You're weaponizing the legal system for psychological warfare. I'm using every tool available, just like Chester used my trust when he abandoned his mother. Over the next hour, she drafted the letter. $47,000 in medical costs. Maria's wages, medications, equipment, doctor visits. Every receipt I'd saved. Every invoice itemized. Failure to respond within 30 days will result in filing a lawsuit in Sarasota County Court. I reviewed the draft 3 times, strengthening the threatening tone. I watched Angela seal the envelope, affix the certified mail label. The letter arrived at Chester's Northport apartment on June 6th. I didn't need to be there to know what happened. Mrs. Patterson's nephew, his landlord, reported the highlights. Chester received the certified letter, had to sign for it, opened it with Stephanie present. The first paragraph. I'd repossessed the house he'd lost to Herman Olson. The second, a demand for $47,000 for Helen's medical care, citing the filial responsibility statute. According to the landlord, Chester made frantic phone calls, legal aid hotlines, free consultation services. The responses, variations of the same theme. The statute exists. Application is complicated. Depends on circumstances. You need representation. Representation he couldn't afford, which meant he couldn't afford to ignore the claim. Stephanie's reported response? I can't do this anymore. This is your family, your mess. June 10th, late afternoon. My doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Chester on my porch. Thinner, disheveled, exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. I opened the door. He stood there, hands fidgeting, shoulders hunched. Dad, please, can we talk? Please. I stepped aside, letting him enter. We stood in the living room. I didn't offer him a seat. Dad, I know I messed up badly, but I'm trying. I'm working. You're working because you have no choice. I cut him off. Not because you've changed. That's not fair. You don't know. I know exactly who you are. You showed me in Barcelona. You showed me every day your mother needed you and you weren't there. His voice cracked. She forgave me before she died. She said she asked me not to be too hard on you. I'm not being hard. I'm being just. What do you want from me? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'll work forever to pay you back. I let the silence stretch, watched him squirm. Then I spoke with the kind of finality that closes doors permanently. When you left your mother dying to take a vacation, you made your choice. I've made mine. The house you lost, I own it now. The debt, I'm claiming that's your burden to carry, even if it's only in your mind. So this is it, he whispered. You're just done with me? I was done with you the moment I saw that post from Barcelona. This is just paperwork. You're my father, and Helen was your mother. You remember what you did to her. Live with that. I have to. I walked to the door, opened it. Chester stood there for another moment, then left. I watched him drive away in a car that probably should have been in a junkyard years ago. The following week, through Mrs. Patterson's nephew, the news came. Stephanie moved out June 12th. Chester was alone now, barely making rent. He'd found work. Amazon delivery driver. $16 an hour. I sat at my desk and drafted an email to Angela. Withdraw the filial responsibility claim. I'd never intended to follow through. The weapon was the threat itself, not the action. Chester would spend months, maybe years, waiting for a lawsuit that would never come. That uncertainty, that fear, that was the point. Early July, I listed both properties for sale. The house I built sold in 11 days for $675,000. The recovered house took 3 weeks, selling for $335,000. Over $1 million in transactions, handled with the same precision I'd brought to architectural projects decades ago. I bought a modest condo in a senior community overlooking Sarasota Bay. 2 bedrooms, clean lines, more space than I needed. It cost me $245,000, leaving $765,000 from the property sales. Combined with my existing savings, I had $1.285 million. Almost exactly what the estate had been worth before I transferred it to the MS Foundation. Angela helped me establish the Helen Watkins Memorial Foundation, a proper 501c3. Board of Directors. Mission statement. Providing in-home nursing assistance for families dealing with MS. The paperwork took 6 weeks. By mid-August, everything was official. August 15th, we held a small ceremony. 40 people in a downtown conference room. Neighbors, Helen's former coworkers, Maria, representatives from local MS support groups. The Sarasota Herald Tribune sent a reporter. I gave a brief speech about Helen's strength, her grace, her belief that people should help each other. I announced the foundation would distribute grants immediately. $15,000 each to qualifying families needing in-home nursing support. The first grants went out that week. 3 families, $45,000, enabling care that meant the difference between managing at home and institutional placement. Mrs. Patterson posted photos from the ceremony on Facebook, tagged me, tagged the foundation, adding details about Helen's story. The devoted wife, the difficult illness, the husband who honored her memory by helping others. Chester saw it. According to the landlord, he saw the ceremony photos, the grant announcements, the foundation bearing his mother's name, funded by the estate he'd expected to inherit. He didn't call, didn't show up. He just saw it on a screen, absorbed the final accounting of what his choices had cost him. August 1st, Stephanie filed for divorce in Florida. No fault, no assets to divide. A quick dissolution. 2 weeks later, it was final. Chester signed the papers without contest. He had nothing left to fight for, nothing left to fight with. I spent my days at the condo volunteering with the foundation's administrative work. Grant applications, family interviews, coordination with nursing agencies. It turned out the skills I developed managing architectural projects translated well to managing charitable operations. Late August evening, I sat on my condo balcony, watching the sun set over Sarasota Bay. Coffee cooling in my cup. My herb garden thriving in small pots along the railing. Simple pleasures. Sufficient pleasures. Helen's photo sat on the side table. Our wedding day. Young and hopeful. I looked at it, then at the bay, the expansive water reflecting orange and gold. The foundation would continue long after I was gone. Board members committed. Funding secure. Mission clear. Helen's name would help families for decades. That mattered more than any revenge. Chester was in Northport, working a delivery route, living in a one-bedroom apartment alone. He'd lost his inheritance, his house, his wife, his father. He'd gained exactly what his choices had earned him: isolation and consequence. I'd achieved what I'd set out to achieve. Justice, not vengeance, but punishment proportional to the harm. Helen honored, not through bitterness, but through purpose. The sun touched the horizon, light spreading across the water in patterns that seemed deliberate, but were just physics and circumstance. Like justice, perhaps. Natural law, playing out over time. I wasn't happy. Helen was still gone. That wound would never fully heal. But I was at peace. The books balanced. The architecture of consequence, properly constructed. Chester living with his choices. Helen's memory living in meaningful action. I finished my coffee, stood, brought the cup inside. Tomorrow, I'd review grant applications. Next week, I'd visit families who'd received assistance. I'd build something positive from the wreckage Chester had created. The difference between us, I'd realized over these months, wasn't intelligence or opportunity. It was understanding that actions have weight, that choices echo forward. That family means more than blood. It means showing up when someone needs you, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Chester never learned that. Maybe he never could. I'd stopped trying to teach him. Now, I just lived the lesson myself, helping families who understood what he never would. That caring for someone isn't a burden. It's a privilege. And when you fail at it, you lose more than money or property. You lose the right to call yourself family. The bay darkened. Night settled in. I stood at my window, looking out at the water, the sky, the distant lights of a city where I'd spent my life building things. Buildings, relationships, a reputation, and now a foundation that would outlive me. Chester was out there somewhere in the darkness, delivering packages to strangers' doors, counting pennies, sleeping in a cheap apartment with walls thin enough to hear neighbors' lives continuing around him. Alone. With his choices, I turned from the window, closed the blinds, and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring more grant applications, more families needing help, more opportunities to transform suffering into someone else's relief. That transformation, tragedy into purpose, pain into help, that was the architecture I'd been building all along. And unlike Chester, I'd built it to last. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been a journey I never expected, filled with pain, but ultimately purpose. I hope it made you think. What would you have done in my shoes? How do you define family? Let me know in the comments below. Take care and good luck.